Agent Rebecca Foster stood in the castle's main conference room, studying a large whiteboard covered with photographs, timelines, and connection diagrams. After 2 days of intensive investigation, the scope of the surveillance operation was becoming clear, but the identity of the inside collaborator remained a mystery. Marcus Thompson sat across from her, reviewing personnel files for the 20th time. Every member of the castle staff had been interviewed, their backgrounds checked, and their activities during the past month scrutinized. The investigation had revealed some minor security lapses and a few personal issues among staff members, but no clear evidence of betrayal. Captain Thompson, we need to consider the possibility that our insider isn't a regular staff member, Agent Foster said, looking up from her analysis. The level of access required to plant those devices suggests someone with authority to move freely throughout the castle without question. The implication was clear, but difficult to accept. Foster was suggesting that the traitor might be someone in a position of trust and responsibility, possibly even someone from Marcus's own security team. Dr. Chen entered the room carrying her laptop and a stack of technical reports. She had been working around the clock analyzing the surveillance devices and the data they had collected. Her findings were about to change everything they thought they knew about the operation. Agent Foster, Captain Thompson, I've made a breakthrough, Dr. Chen announced, setting up her laptop to project information onto the room's large screen. I've been analyzing the transmission patterns from the surveillance devices, and I've discovered something significant. The screen displayed a complex diagram showing radio frequencies and transmission times. To Marcus, it looked like a web of interconnected lines and data points, but Dr. Chen's excitement suggested she had found something important. These devices weren't just recording and transmitting randomly, she explained. They were programmed to activate and transmit data at very specific times, coordinated with particular events in the castle's daily schedule. Someone programmed them with intimate knowledge of when the royal family would be in certain locations. Agent Foster leaned forward, studying the diagram. Can you determine when this programming occurred? That's the interesting part, Dr. Chen replied. The programming wasn't done when the devices were initially installed. It was updated remotely, as recently as 3 days ago. Someone with access to the transmission codes has been adjusting the surveillance schedule in real time. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Remote programming meant the person responsible was still active and still had access to the surveillance network. Even though they had found and disabled the devices, the traitor was continuing to operate. Dr. Chen, is it possible to trace these remote programming signals back to their source? I've been working on that, she replied, pulling up another screen of data. The signals are being sent from a location within 5 miles of the castle, but they're using sophisticated encryption and signal bouncing to hide the exact location. Agent Foster stood and began pacing the room. Marcus recognized the behavior from his military experience. She was processing information and forming a plan of action. Here's what we know, Foster summarized. We have a surveillance operation that required inside knowledge, continued remote access to the devices, and someone who can move freely through the castle. We also have evidence of planning for a physical operation involving sedatives and security overrides. This isn't just espionage. Someone is planning to kidnap or harm a member of the royal family. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus had dedicated his career to preventing exactly this kind of threat, and now he was facing the possibility that someone close to him was actively working to harm the people he had sworn to protect. His radio buzzed with an urgent message from Sergeant Williams. Captain Thompson, we have a situation at the main gate. Someone is trying to gain access claiming to be from the maintenance company, but their credentials don't match our records. Marcus and Agent Foster immediately headed toward the main gate. The castle's entrance was secured by multiple layers of security, including armed guards, electronic access controls, and physical barriers. Anyone attempting to gain unauthorized access would face immediate detention and questioning. At the gate, they found 2 men in maintenance uniforms standing beside a van marked with the logo of a legitimate company that regularly serviced the castle. Sergeant Williams had correctly detained them when their identification didn't match the scheduled maintenance appointments. Agent Foster approached the detained men and began questioning them. Their story seemed plausible at first. They claimed to be emergency repair technicians responding to a call about electrical problems in the castle's communications center. They had work orders and identification that appeared authentic. But, as Agent Foster continued her questioning, inconsistencies began to appear. The men couldn't provide specific details about the supposed electrical problem. Their knowledge of the castle's systems was too general, lacking the specificity that real maintenance workers would possess. Marcus stepped aside and radioed Dr. Chun. "Can you check if we actually have any electrical problems in the communications center?" "Negative, Captain. All systems are functioning normally. We haven't requested any emergency maintenance." The fake maintenance workers were clearly connected to the surveillance operation. Someone had sent them to gain access to the castle, possibly to install additional devices or to gather information for whatever larger plan was in progress. Agent Foster had the men arrested and their van searched. Inside the vehicle, investigators found equipment that had nothing to do with electrical maintenance. There were electronic scanning devices, computer equipment, and detailed floor plans of the castle that matched the ones found in the hidden bag. Under intensive questioning, one of the men eventually admitted they had been hired to conduct security assessments of the castle. They claimed they didn't know the full scope of the operation, only that they were supposed to gain access and report on security procedures they observed. But their arrest provided Agent Foster with the breakthrough she needed. The men's cell phones contained communications with someone using an encrypted messaging system. While the messages were coded, the technical analysis revealed they were communicating with someone inside the castle. Dr. Chun, can you trace the source of these encrypted messages? "Give me a few hours," she replied. "But if the person is inside the castle and using the same system, I should be able to identify their device." As afternoon turned to evening, Marcus found himself walking through the castle corridors where this investigation had begun. The royal family remained at a secure location, but their absence made the castle feel empty and somehow vulnerable. His thoughts were interrupted by his radio. "Captain Thompson, this is Dr. Chun. I've traced the source of the encrypted messages. You're not going to like what I found." Marcus hurried back to the communications center, where Dr. Chun was surrounded by computer monitors and technical equipment. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she pointed to one of the screens. "The encrypted messages were sent from a device located in the security office," she announced. "Someone with access to our own command center has been coordinating this entire operation." The security office was the heart of the castle's protection system. Only senior members of the security team had unrestricted access to that area. Marcus felt a sickening realization as he understood the implications. Agent Foster arrived moments later, and Dr. Chin shared her findings. The traced messages led to a specific computer terminal in the security office, one used by several different guards throughout their shifts. But, by cross-referencing the message times with duty schedules, they were able to identify when specific individuals had access to that terminal. "Captain Thompson," Agent Foster said grimly, "I need you to review this list and tell me if anything stands out." She handed him a printout showing the names of guards who had used the terminal during the times when encrypted messages were sent. Marcus scanned the list, his heart racing as he looked for patterns or anomalies. One name appeared more frequently than others during the critical transmission times. Marcus felt his world collapse as he recognized the name of someone he had trusted completely. "Sergeant Williams," he said quietly. "She had access to the terminal during most of the transmission times." Agent Foster nodded solemnly. "Sarah Williams has been with Castle Security for 8 years. She has an exemplary service record and complete access to security procedures and schedules. She would have been perfectly positioned to coordinate this surveillance operation." Marcus couldn't accept what the evidence was telling him. Sarah Williams had been his most trusted team member. She had discovered some of the surveillance devices herself. She had worked alongside him throughout this investigation. The idea that she was the traitor seemed impossible. "There has to be another explanation," Marcus insisted. "Williams has been helping with the investigation. She's the one who found several of the devices." "Think about it, Captain," Agent Foster replied. "Who better to control the investigation than someone participating in it? She could have guided the search away from devices that weren't supposed to be found yet. She could have monitored our progress and reported back to her handlers. The pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. Williams had indeed found several devices, but always in locations that seemed almost too obvious. She had been present during all the security briefings, giving her access to information about the investigation's progress. Her radio communications during the search could have been coded messages to her contacts outside the castle. Marcus's radio crackled with an incoming message. "Captain Thompson, this is Sergeant Williams. I'm in the East Wing conducting the final security sweep. Could you meet me here? I think I've found something important." Agent Foster and Marcus exchanged glances. This could be their opportunity to confront Williams and end the investigation. But it could also be a trap. If Williams knew her cover was blown, she might be preparing for a dangerous confrontation. "Dr. Chun, can you track Williams's radio signal and determine her exact location?" "Already on it," Dr. Chun replied, working at her computer. "She's in the East Wing storage area, the same location where we found the bag of equipment." Agent Foster made the decision to approach Williams with backup. She contacted her MI5 team and arranged for additional security personnel to surround the East Wing before they confronted the suspected traitor. As they prepared for what could be a dangerous encounter, Marcus reflected on how the investigation had evolved. What had started as the discovery of a simple surveillance device had revealed a complex intelligence operation targeting the royal family. The follow-up search had uncovered not just electronic surveillance, but evidence of planning for a physical attack. Most devastating of all, it had revealed that the threat came from within the very security team trusted to provide protection. The betrayal cut deeply, challenging everything Marcus believed about loyalty and duty. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Agent Foster approached the East Wing with a team of armed agents positioned throughout the area. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the corridor windows, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. They found Sergeant Williams exactly where she had reported, standing in the storage room where the bag of equipment had been discovered. She turned as they entered, and Marcus could see immediately that something was wrong. Her usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by an expression of resignation and defeat. "I've been waiting for you," Williams said quietly. "I knew it was only a matter of time before you figured it out." Agent Foster stepped forward with her weapon drawn, but pointed at the floor. "Sergeant Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy against the Crown and violations of national security." Williams nodded slowly, making no attempt to resist or flee. "I suppose you want to know why," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "You want to understand how someone could betray everything we're supposed to stand for." Marcus found his voice, though it felt thick with emotion. "Sarah, help me understand. We've worked together for years. I trusted you completely. What happened?" Williams sat down on a storage crate, suddenly, looking much older than her 35 years. "It started small," she began. "Financial problems after my divorce. My ex-husband left me with massive debts, and my salary wasn't enough to cover everything. Someone approached me with an offer to provide information about security procedures. They said it was for a legitimate security assessment. But it escalated beyond that," Agent Foster observed. "Much further than I ever intended," Williams admitted. "Once they had me providing information, they wanted more and more. Eventually, they were asking for detailed schedules of the royal family's activities. By then, I was in too deep to refuse." Marcus felt anger and disappointment warring in his chest. "The surveillance devices, the planning for a physical operation, you helped coordinate all of that." Williams looked down at her hands. "I didn't know about the kidnapping plan until it was too late to stop it. They told me it was just information gathering. But when I saw the sedatives and the security overrides, I realized what they were really planning." "Is that why you helped find some of the devices?" Agent Foster asked. "Were you trying to sabotage the operation?" "I was trying to find a way out without getting killed," Williams replied. "These people don't forgive betrayal, and they don't leave loose ends. When you started the intensive search, I guided you towards some of the devices hoping it would force them to abandon the plan." Agent Foster contacted her team to report that the suspect was in custody and cooperating. The immediate threat to castle security appeared to be over, but there would be extensive follow-up work to identify and apprehend Williams's contacts outside the castle. As evening fell, Marcus stood in the security office that Williams had used to coordinate her betrayal. The investigation that had begun with a concerning discovery had ended with the arrest of someone he had considered both a colleague and a friend. The royal family would return to the castle the following day, and normal security operations would resume. But Marcus knew that the trust and confidence that had been broken would take much longer to repair. The follow-up search had dawn broke over Windsor Castle as Marcus Thompson reviewed the night's findings in the security office. 6 surveillance devices discovered, each more sophisticated than typical commercial equipment. The technical analysis had revealed disturbing details about their capabilities and origins. Dr. Chin spread photographs and technical diagrams across the conference table. Dark circles under her eyes showed she had worked through the night analyzing the recovered devices. Captain Thompson, what we've found here represents months of planning and significant financial resources. These aren't off-the-shelf spy gadgets. They're custom-built for this specific operation. Marcus studied the images showing the internal components of each device. Even to his untrained eye, the electronics looked advanced and expensive. Can you trace where they came from? That's the problem, Dr. Chin replied. The components are from multiple manufacturers across different countries. Someone deliberately sourced parts internationally to avoid detection. But I did find something interesting. She pointed to a small chip visible in one of the photographs. This transmitter technology is only available to government agencies and certain private intelligence firms. The implications sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Professional surveillance equipment meant professional operators. This wasn't amateur espionage or celebrity stalking. Someone with serious resources wanted information about the royal family, and they had invested considerable time and money to get it. Colonel Whitfield entered the room carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a thick folder. His usually perfect uniform showed wrinkles from the long night, and his gray hair was disheveled. "Good morning, Captain. I've been on secure calls with Downing Street and the intelligence services all night. This situation has reached the highest levels of government." Marcus straightened in his chair. When government officials started making emergency calls before dawn, it meant the threat was being taken very seriously. "What's our next move, sir?" "We're bringing in MI5, Colonel Whitfield announced. "This is now being treated as a potential national security issue. Agent Rebecca Foster will arrive within the hour to take lead on the investigation. Our job is to continue securing the castle and assist with their inquiries." Dr. Chin looked up from her technical reports. "Colonel, there's something else you should know. These devices weren't just recording conversations. They were also tracking movement patterns through motion sensors. Whoever placed them was mapping the royal family's daily routines in detail." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Movement tracking meant the surveillance operation went beyond gathering information. Someone had been studying the royal family's habits, possibly looking for patterns they could exploit. Marcus's radio interrupted the briefing. "Captain Thompson, this is Sergeant Williams. We have a situation in the East Wing. You need to see this immediately." Marcus grabbed his radio. "What kind of situation, Sergeant?" "We found something that doesn't match the other devices. It looks like someone was preparing for more than just surveillance." Marcus exchanged glances with Colonel Whitfield. The discovery of surveillance devices had been alarming enough, but if Williams had found evidence of additional threats, the situation was escalating beyond their worst fears. They hurried through the castle corridors toward the East Wing. Early morning sunlight streamed through the windows, creating an almost peaceful atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the tension Marcus felt. The East Wing housed administrative offices and storage areas, places the royal family rarely visited but that contained sensitive documents and historical artifacts. Sergeant Williams met them outside a small storage room that was typically used to house cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment. Her face was pale, and Marcus could see she was shaken by whatever she had discovered. "Sir, we were doing a final sweep of the areas we missed during the night search," Williams explained. "When we moved some of the cleaning equipment, we found this hidden behind a false panel in the wall." She led them into the storage room and pointed to a section of the wall where wooden paneling had been carefully removed. Behind it was a small cavity that had been created by removing insulation and structural materials. Inside the cavity was a black canvas bag about the size of a laptop computer. Dr. Chin immediately approached with her equipment to scan the bag before anyone touched it. Her electronic detector beeped steadily as she moved it over the bag's surface. "It's not explosive," she announced. "But there's definitely electronic equipment inside." Marcus carefully lifted the bag from its hiding place. It was heavier than he expected, with the weight distributed unevenly, as if it contained multiple different objects. He set it on a clean surface and slowly opened the zipper. The contents made everyone in the room take a step back. Inside were items that clearly indicated this operation went far beyond passive surveillance. There were floor plans of the castle marked with red ink showing security camera positions and guard patrol routes. There were photographs of the royal family taken with telephoto lenses, showing them in private moments within the castle grounds. But most disturbing were the other items in the bag. There was a small container of what appeared to be sedative drugs, complete with syringes. There were lockpicking tools, electronic key cards that could override security systems, and a detailed schedule of the royal family's activities for the next 2 weeks. Colonel Whitfield's face turned gray as he examined the evidence. This wasn't just surveillance. Someone was planning something much more serious. Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he realized what they were looking at. The surveillance devices had been gathering information to support a larger operation. Someone had been preparing to physically access areas of the castle where the royal family lived and worked. "Dr. Chun, how long do you think this equipment has been here?" Marcus asked. She examined the bag and its contents with her magnifying equipment. "Based on the dust patterns and the way this hiding place was constructed, I'd estimate several weeks, possibly longer. Whoever did this has been planning for months." Marcus's radio crackled with another urgent message. "Captain Thompson, this is Guard Peterson in the communications center. We've intercepted something you need to hear immediately." The communications center was located in the basement of the castle, a secure room filled with radio equipment, computer servers, and monitoring devices. Guard Peterson, a former military communications specialist, managed the electronic systems that connected the castle's security network to outside agencies. "Sir, about an hour ago, our monitoring equipment picked up a brief radio transmission from somewhere inside the castle," Peterson explained. "It was encrypted, but our computers were able to decode part of it." He played the recording through the room's speakers. It was a male voice speaking in what sounded like code words and numbers. Most of it was incomprehensible, but one phrase came through clearly: "Package delivery delayed until secondary confirmation." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Someone was still inside the castle, or at least someone was still monitoring the situation and communicating with outside contacts. The discovery of the surveillance devices hadn't ended the threat. It had only revealed part of it. "Peterson, can you trace the source of that transmission?" "That's the problem, sir. It was very brief and used frequency hopping technology to avoid detection. But, based on the signal strength, it originated from somewhere within the castle walls." Colonel Whitfield immediately ordered a complete lockdown of the castle. No one would be allowed to enter or leave without personal authorization from him or Marcus. The remaining staff members would be questioned individually, and every area of the castle would be searched again with a focus on finding whoever had sent that transmission. Agent Rebecca Foster arrived as the lockdown was being implemented. She was a tall woman in her 40s with short brown hair and intelligent green eyes that seemed to take in every detail of her surroundings. She carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to handling serious threats to national security. "Captain Thompson, I've been briefed on the situation," Agent Foster said as she entered the security office. "MI5 is treating this as a potential intelligence operation against the Crown. We believe this surveillance network was established to gather information for a larger plan." Marcus showed her the evidence they had collected, the 6 surveillance devices, the bag of equipment, and the technical analysis reports. Agent Foster studied each item carefully, asking detailed questions about where and when everything was discovered. "The level of sophistication suggests foreign intelligence involvement," she concluded. "But the intimate knowledge of castle security procedures indicates someone with inside access. We're looking at a combination of external planning and internal collaboration." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Internal collaboration meant someone on the security team, or someone else with regular access to the castle, was working with whoever had planted the surveillance devices. Someone he knew and trusted had betrayed their oath to protect the royal family. Agent Foster continued her assessment. The encrypted radio transmissions suggest the operation is still active. They know we've discovered their surveillance network, but they're continuing to communicate. This indicates they either have a backup plan or they're preparing to execute whatever they were originally planning. Marcus realized the situation was more dangerous than anyone had initially understood. The discovery of the surveillance devices wasn't the end of the threat. It was possibly just the beginning of a more serious attempt against the royal family's security. "What's our next step?" Marcus asked. "We need to identify the inside collaborator," Agent Foster replied. Someone provided the detailed information needed to place those devices in such strategic locations. They also provided the security schedules and patrol routes we found in that bag. Until we identify that person, the royal family remains at risk. The investigation shifted focus from searching for devices to investigating people. Every member of the castle staff, every security guard, and every person with regular access to the building would be questioned and their backgrounds re-examined. Marcus looked around the security office at his team members. These were people he had worked with for years, people he considered friends as well as colleagues. The thought that one of them might be a traitor was almost impossible to accept. But as Agent Foster began setting up her investigation procedures, Marcus knew they were facing a threat more complex and dangerous than any they had encountered before. Someone close to them had betrayed everything they stood for, and until that person was identified, no one in the castle was safe. The afternoon brought new revelations as Agent Foster's team began their investigation. Using advanced computer analysis, they discovered that the surveillance devices had been transmitting information to a location outside London. The data trail suggested a sophisticated intelligence operation with international connections. Marcus found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about castle security. How had someone gained access to restricted areas without detection? Who had provided the detailed information about security procedures? And, most importantly, what was the ultimate goal of this elaborate surveillance operation? As evening approached, Marcus realized that the follow-up search had uncovered something far more serious than anyone had anticipated. They weren't just dealing with privacy violations or information gathering. They were facing a coordinated attempt to penetrate the heart of British security, with implications that could reach the highest levels of government. The hunt for the truth was intensifying, and Marcus knew that before it was over, everything he believed about loyalty and trust would be put to the test. Captain Marcus Thompson adjusted his uniform collar as he walked through the grand hallways of Windsor Castle. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. He had been serving as a royal guard for 15 years, but today felt different. Something in the air made him uneasy. The previous evening had ended with a discovery that troubled him deeply. During a routine security sweep of the castle grounds, his team had found something that didn't belong. Hidden beneath a pile of autumn leaves near the east wing was a small black device, no bigger than a matchbox. It looked like some kind of recording equipment, but it was unlike anything the security team had seen before. Marcus had immediately reported the discovery to his superior, Colonel James Whitfield. The colonel's face had turned pale when he examined the device. After a brief consultation with the intelligence unit, they decided to conduct a thorough follow-up search of the entire castle complex. This wasn't just about security anymore. This was about protecting the royal family from an unknown threat. The morning briefing had been tense. Marcus gathered his team of 12 experienced guards in the security office. The room was small and windowless, filled with monitors showing feeds from cameras positioned throughout the castle. Maps of the building hung on the walls, marked with red zones that required special attention. "Listen carefully," Marcus had told his team. "Yesterday's discovery suggests we may have a serious security breach. We need to search every room, every corridor, and every hiding spot in this castle. Look for anything unusual, devices, suspicious objects, or signs that someone has been where they shouldn't be." Sergeant Sarah Williams, his most trusted team member, raised her hand. "Sir, do we know what that device was for? Was it recording conversations or movements?" Marcus shook his head. "The technical team is still analyzing it. But we can't take any chances. The royal family's safety depends on us finding out if there are more devices or if someone has been gathering information about their daily routines. The team split into pairs, each assigned to different sections of the castle. Marcus decided to start with the private quarters, the most sensitive area of the building. These rooms were where the royal family spent their personal time, away from public ceremonies and official duties. As he walked toward the West Wing, Marcus thought about his years of service. He had joined the Royal Guard after serving in the military, drawn by the honor of protecting the monarchy. Over the years, he had dealt with various security threats, protesters trying to climb the gates, suspicious packages left by tourists, and the occasional drunk person attempting to enter restricted areas. But this felt different. This felt calculated and professional. The first room he entered was a small sitting room used by the younger members of the royal family. Sunlight filled the space through large windows that overlooked the castle gardens. Marcus moved methodically, checking behind picture frames, under furniture, and inside decorative vases. His trained eyes searched for anything that seemed out of place. After 30 minutes, he found nothing suspicious. The room appeared exactly as it should be. But, as he moved to leave, something caught his attention. On the windowsill sat a small crystal ornament that he didn't remember seeing in previous security checks. It was beautiful, shaped like a swan, and it sparkled in the morning light. Marcus picked up the ornament carefully. It felt heavier than it should for its size. He turned it over in his hands, examining every angle. There, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for, was a tiny hole no bigger than a pinhead. His heart began to race as he realized what he might be holding. He immediately radioed his team. "All units, this is Captain Thompson. I may have found another device in the West Wing sitting room," requesting immediate backup and the technical team. Within minutes, Sergeant Williams arrived with 2 other guards. Behind them came Dr. Elizabeth Chun, the castle's head of technical security. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had previously worked for the intelligence services before joining the royal security team. "Show me what you've found," Dr. Chun said, pulling on thin gloves. Marcus handed her the crystal ornament. She examined it with a small magnifying glass, then used a tiny tool to probe the hole he had discovered. Her expression grew serious as she worked. "This is sophisticated," she said quietly. "Much more advanced than the device you found yesterday. This appears to be a listening device designed to look like a decorative object. Someone with considerable resources and technical knowledge placed this here." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Someone had been listening to private conversations in the royal family's personal spaces. How long had the device been there? What had it recorded? And, most importantly, who was behind this? "We need to expand the search immediately," Marcus said. "If there are 2 devices, there could be more. This isn't the work of an amateur." Dr. Chin nodded. "I'll take this back to the lab for analysis. We might be able to trace its origin or find out how it transmits information. But, Captain, you should know, devices this sophisticated are usually part of a larger operation. Whoever did this has been planning for a long time." As the technical team left with the crystal ornament, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Protecting the royal family had always been his primary duty, but now he realized that someone had been watching and listening, possibly for weeks or even months. He gathered his team for an emergency meeting. The small security office felt even more cramped as all 12 guards crowded inside. Marcus looked at their faces, men and women who had dedicated their lives to royal protection. They all understood the gravity of the situation. "We're dealing with a professional surveillance operation," Marcus announced. 2 sophisticated listening devices in 2 days means we're looking at organized intelligence gathering. Our job now is to find every device and identify how this breach occurred. Sergeant Williams spoke up. "Sir, should we inform the royal family about what we've discovered?" Marcus had been dreading this question. Protocol required that the family be informed of any security threats, but he also knew that this news would cause considerable alarm. The royal family trusted their guards to keep them safe, and learning that their private conversations might have been monitored would be deeply disturbing. "We'll brief Colonel Whitfield first," Marcus decided. "He'll determine when and how to inform the family. Our immediate priority is the search operation." The team divided the castle into grid sections, with each pair responsible for a specific area. Marcus assigned the most experienced guards to the most sensitive locations, the bedrooms, private dining areas, and personal offices used by the royal family. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus received regular radio updates from his team. Most reports were negative, no suspicious devices found. But the absence of discoveries didn't provide relief. Instead, it increased the tension. The two devices they had found were so well hidden and professionally disguised that Marcus worried they might be missing others. Around 3 o'clock, his radio crackled with an urgent message from guard Robert Hayes, who was searching the library with his partner. "Captain Thompson, we found something in the main library. You need to see this immediately." Marcus hurried through the castle corridors to the library, a massive room filled with thousands of books collected over centuries. The afternoon light filtering through stained glass windows created a rainbow pattern on the wooden floors. It was one of the most beautiful rooms in the castle, and one of the royal family's favorite places for quiet reading. Guard Hayes led him to a section near the history books. "Sir, look at this," he said, pointing to a leather-bound volume on the middle shelf. "This book doesn't match the others in the series." Marcus examined the book Hayes indicated. At first glance, it appeared to be another volume of British military history, consistent with the surrounding books. But Hayes was right. Something was different. The leather binding was slightly newer, and the gold lettering on the spine was a different shade than the other volumes. "Good eye," Marcus said. He carefully removed the book from the shelf and opened it. Instead of pages, the interior had been hollowed out to create a small compartment. Inside was another electronic device, larger than the crystal ornament, but still compact enough to hide easily. "3 devices," Marcus said quietly. "This is definitely not random. Someone has been conducting systematic surveillance of the royal family." Dr. Chin arrived quickly to examine the 3rd device. Her analysis confirmed Marcus's worst fears. "This one is different from the others," she reported. "It appears to be a data collection unit, possibly storing recorded conversations and transmitting them at scheduled intervals. The level of sophistication suggests state-level resources." The word state-level hung in the air like a threat. Marcus understood the implications. They weren't dealing with curious journalists or royal watchers. This was the kind of surveillance operation conducted by foreign intelligence services or highly organized criminal groups. As evening approached, Marcus stood in the library, surrounded by centuries of British history and literature. The irony wasn't lost on him. In this room dedicated to preserving knowledge and culture, someone had been secretly gathering intelligence that could potentially harm the very institution the castle represented. His radio buzzed with another update. Sergeant Williams reported finding a 4th device hidden inside a decorative lamp in one of the guest rooms. The pattern was becoming clear. Whoever had placed these devices had intimate knowledge of the castle layout and access to areas that should have been secure. Marcus made a difficult decision. He called Colonel Whitfield and recommended that the royal family be moved to a secure location while the search continued. The colonel agreed, and within an hour, the family had been quietly relocated to a safe house, while their residence underwent the most thorough security sweep in its history. As night fell over Windsor Castle, Marcus continued coordinating the search operation. His team worked under bright portable lights, methodically examining every room, every piece of furniture, and every decorative object. They found 2 more devices before midnight, one hidden in a picture frame and another inside a ornamental clock. 6 devices total, all professionally installed and designed to monitor different areas of the castle. Marcus realized that whoever was behind this operation had been building a comprehensive surveillance network. They had been watching the royal family's movements, listening to their conversations, and gathering detailed intelligence about their daily routines. The discovery raised terrifying questions. Who had authorized this operation? How long had it been active? What information had already been collected and transmitted? And, most importantly, what was the ultimate purpose of this surveillance? As Marcus stood in the empty castle, surrounded by his team and the evidence of a massive security breach, he knew that this was only the beginning. The follow-up search had revealed the scope of the threat, but the real investigation was just starting. Someone with considerable resources and expertise had penetrated the heart of the British monarchy's security, and finding out who and why would require all of his skills and experience. The night was far from over. and Marcus suspected that dawn would bring even more disturbing discoveries. The royal family's safety depended on his team's ability to uncover the full extent of this surveillance operation and identify those responsible before they could act on whatever intelligence they had gathered. The hunt for answers was about to begin.